Good morning, class. Today is April 20th, and we are going to get started reviewing the water cycle. So you're going to need your Ultimate Science notebook and a pen or pencil, and that's it. Let's get started. So you want to try to find the page that looks like this in your Ultimate Science notebooks. It should be the very next page. Now, we did just watch a note-taking video on Thursday. So I want you to kind of keep that in mind as we're taking notes today. This should be a good chance to practice, although you already have your note page set up for you. If you do not have your Ultimate Science notebook at home, make sure you're taking some notes on a spare sheet of paper. Don't worry, this isn't too long, and it should be a good chance to practice whatever form of notes you feel most comfortable with. All right, let's get started. So, by the way, in case you want a more visual model, this is what your paper should look like. So this was what we did on Thursday. This was finishing up that oil spill. This is all those response questions. This page should be done for you. Now we're on this page with the smiling water droplet. So let's begin. So what is the water cycle? So the water cycle is a way that scientists model and describe how water moves throughout the earth. Remember, for my notes, anything that's in all caps should fit into a blank. So your first blank is water cycle. Now, the most common misconception I think students have about the water cycle is that it's a complete circle, like it moves in a very predictable manner. So a lot of students think of the water cycle like this because this is how they've learned it as kids. And when you're littler, this makes sense. But now that we're moving into a more middle school mindset, we're going to look at the caveats. We're going to look at the tiny, tiny things that we might not have known. So a lot of students think about it this way. This is my terrible drawing of the water, okay? Then evaporation comes along because of the sun. It goes up, and now it's in the air. Then it comes together in condensation. It forms clouds. Then it rains, falls as precipitation, and runoff goes back to the ocean. So this is how a lot of students think about this. They think about it as a perfect little cycle, that it goes from evaporation to condensation to precipitation to runoff, to evaporation to condensation to precipitation to runoff. And the water cycle certainly does that, right? It does certainly repeat itself over and over and over again. But just like we talked about with the rock cycle, how things get stuck at different points in the rock cycle, definitely certain things get stuck in the water cycle. The oceans are huge. There's water droplets that can get stuck there for hundreds of thousands of years. It might be that some water was condensed into a cloud, started to precipitate, and then re-evaporated right away. Didn't even go through this whole runoff collection series. So just keep in mind as we go through this that I'm going to talk about it like it is a perfect cycle, but it isn't. It gets kind of messy the longer, the more in-depth you look at it. And certainly scientists are looking at what other pollutants, what other particles are getting stuck in this water cycle and how that's affecting us. So that's kind of the next level with the water cycle, is looking at how is it not a perfect cycle and what other stuff is it bringing with it, mainly pollutants and other things that are harmful to humans. Okay, so the water cycle is a way for scientists to model and describe how water moves throughout the earth. Now, we have talked about this over and over and over again, but evaporation is when water is changed from water into water vapor, which is just the gas form of water, with heat energy from the sun. I think this is time to review a specific song. Liquid to a solid, it is called freezing. Solid to a liquid, it melts back again. Liquid to a gas is called evaporation. Gas to a liquid is condensation. Awesome, right? So those are the processes. So just remember, evaporation is when a liquid changes to a gas. And we also remember this when we learned our water cycle song. Water raises up as evaporation. 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 Clouds come together as condensation. 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 Then it falls from the sky as precipitation. Then it goes back to the seas, and the whole thing starts again. So remember, Yellow Submarine, that is our water cycle song, just to kind of get those juices flowing in your mind. and to listen to my terrible singing. Now, the mind-blowing concept is that surface water is Hardest thing we've learned all year, promise you. Water found in the lakes, oceans, and other areas above the ground. And groundwater is all the water stored below the ground in water tables and aquifers. Now, I know you crazy scientists, cannot imagine this, but so hard. Water that's on top of the ground is called surface water. Water that's below the ground is called groundwater. Surface water, groundwater. Surface water, groundwater. Surface water, groundwater. Easy, right? I was kidding about it being really hard. It's not. So make sure you fill those in. Our next blanks are surface water and groundwater. Let's picture this for a second. So I'm showing you a picture of seawater, saltwater, and freshwater. You might be like, Mrs. Benavides, why is the saltwater not mixing with the freshwater? We're going to talk about that in a density lab on Thursday or Wednesday. I can't remember which one. But just know that sometimes water gets trapped in the ground. So people actually dig into the ground to get water. As a matter of fact, I think here, I haven't lived here long enough to tell, but I think here in Colorado, we get our water from a water table. We get it from a well, right? And so if you're digging a well, you're digging into the ground to try to get that fresh water that's underneath the ground, that's stored in those water tables and aquifers. So we are drinking groundwater here. Where I grew up in Michigan, we have lots of lakes. We have more fresh water in Michigan than anywhere else in the world. So we're getting our water supply from surface water, from those lakes of fresh water that are above ground. Again, Colorado, we get it from underneath the ground in a well. In Michigan, we get it on the surface or surface water above ground. So that's just kind of an interesting preview. Condensation is the change of water vapor into liquid form. This is the part of the water cycle where clouds are formed. So you see here, you have a bunch of boxes saying cumulus, nimbus, stratus, and cirrus. I want you to pause and try to remember which of these is which, and then I'm going to review with you. So draw a picture of a cumulus cloud, a nimbus cloud, a stratus cloud, and a cirrus cloud. All right, so at this point, I'm assuming you're back with me because you filled in those four. Remember, show me a cumulus cloud. Cumulus. Show me a cirrus cloud. Cirrus. It's the wispy ones, right? Like the ballerina. Stratus. Straight lines. And nimbus. Angry. About to thunderstorm clouds. So let's take a look at what those look like. So this one right here is a cumulus cloud. Remember, it's our happy, fluffy mashed potato clouds. Nimbus cloud. This one's the dark, angry one. This is specifically a cumulonimbus cloud. Nimbus just means that it's dark. This cumulonimbus is tall. It has a flat bottom. Then if we look at stratus clouds, that's like this one. See how it's in a nice straight line? Again, these are specifically cumulostratus clouds because they look like a cumulus cloud with a straight line on it. And then finally, these are cirrus clouds. These are the wispy ballerina high pressure day kind of things. Speaking of clouds, I feel like we need to review our weather song while we're here. I can talk about the weather. Yes, I can. Like a meteorologist. Tools in hand, cause the barometer measures the air pressure, anemometers for wind speed, rain gauges for precipitation, wind vanes direction, pressures the push and pull, winds a mix of these both. High pressure days are when the sun comes up, low pressure it stays away, humidity is water vapor, dew point is when it rains. Want you participating at home. Reviewing. You're going to be so ready for middle school, right? So precipitation is water that falls from the sky as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Sometimes people think about precipitation as just being rain because that's how we see it most, and that's how it's mostly sent to us on the news and on like the Weather Channel and stuff like that. But it also includes these more rare forms of precipitation, snow, sleet, or hail. Runoff or accumulation, this is when water collects in the oceans, puddles, seas, and lakes. So this is just the part, like if you've ever seen in Pueblo, they actually have really cool drains, especially by the river walk. They show like this drain goes back to the Arkansas River and stuff like that. Like you'll see the water traveling down into that drain. And so that is actually that is actually the process of runoff, right? It's falling from the sky as precipitation. It's traveling back to those bodies of water. So it's kind of a moving water situation. That's why I showed it with an arrow here in my terrible drawing. So that is runoff. I gave a picture of this science tool. Think in your mind, what is this science tool? If you're thinking rain gauge, you're totally correct, because that's what's collecting that water and measuring that precipitation for us. All right, so that is our notes for today. You are all done. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in a little bit for language arts. Make sure you eat lunch.